ESPNFC on the whistle. Hello there, everyone. St James's Park, Newcastle 0, Arsenal 2. The gap at the top between Arsenal and second and Man City top is just 1 point, albeit City have a game in hand. It was a super game for the neutral to watch. Stevie Nicol, what does the win tell us about Arsenal's character?
Well, to be honest, I never particularly questioned Arsenal's character. Couple of times this season I've had some bad results and they've always stepped up. And they did it again today. I mean, it was a fantastic attacking performance. I mean, the game, if ever you could call a game an open attacking game of football, I mean, this was it. This could have been 7-5. This could have been 7-5 easily.
It could.
And the strange thing about it is, yes, Arsenal were great, but the strange thing about it was neither side at any stage were actually in control of the game. Yes, at 2-0, it seemed Arsenal were going to win it, but there was no period in the game where anybody had control for a period of time. It was literally you attack, and then as soon as we get it, we're going to try and attack. So, yeah, 7-5 would have been the correct score. Tough to find a man of the match as well. I mean, you could theoretically talk about the goalkeepers. I
was going to say Aaron Ramsdale was outstanding, keeps a clean sheet, and you say it could have ended 7-5, and you're right.
Yeah, Ramsdale was outstanding. Pope was outstanding as well.
Yeah, sure.
Odegaard was outstanding. I mean, Granit Xhaka, listen, like him or loathe him, he was absolutely in the middle of everything, good and bad for Arsenal. Martinelli was fantastic. I mean, Newcastle just as a unit going forward, they're just so good to watch. I mean, Isak, great on the eye. I mean, really, we could be here all day talking about all the good things in this game because there was so much of it. Some of the passing was excellent. Some of the one-time passing was excellent. Little triangles, not only in their own penalty box, but in the opposition penalty box in the middle of the park. I mean, it really was just for anybody who just likes to watch a game of football. You should watch this again. I mean, it was a fantastic game to watch.
The start of each half, Newcastle came flying out the traps, and had it not been for good goalkeeping, unfortunate misses, they could have found themselves ahead. But throughout, Arsenal had this all for one, one for all. They were prepared and they were up for a battle because you've played there. Yes, you've scored a hat-trick on a Sunday when you missed your sister's wedding. I get that. But nowadays, it's like a bear pit there. You've got to be strong mentally and have a strong will and have a character to go there as an opposition player when the home fans are baying for blood.
Yeah, there's no question. Newcastle and the fans ask you questions when you go there. And today, Arsenal answered them all. The fact that Ramsdale did keep a clean sheet is no question down to him. The four in front of him at times just got cut apart, but he did his job. That's what he's there for. And he's an outstanding goalkeeper who's had an outstanding season. So, yeah, all over the park. Not
one or two issues with Stevie Nicol right now. Let's bring in James Olley from St James's Park. Your timing, sir, is absolutely spot on. It's like you had some sort of button and you just pressed Nicol to keep quiet so you could have your moment in the spotlight. What did you make of Arsenal today? And what did you make of that game? Because from a neutral perspective, it was magic.
Yeah, fantastic game. I think everybody is just trying to draw breath, really. I mean, I thought Arsenal rode their luck in the first 10 minutes, and you've got to say that if the penalty stands or if Jacob Murphy's shot doesn't hit the post and goes in, it's probably a completely different game because I think they looked all at sea really in that first 10 minutes. But after that, once they got a foothold in the game, I thought they were excellent, and I think they've answered a few questions about their mentality, about their durability, and also about their game management, because I think the way they stifled Newcastle, particularly getting in and around Bruno Guimaraes, really stopped him getting on the ball and trying to dictate play in the first half. But also just the cleverness in the second half, the sort of stuff that will agitate anybody who's not a fan of Arsenal, really, going down cheaply to earn a free kick, wasting a bit of time from every goal kick, trying to just slow things down so Newcastle couldn't create a momentum and get this crowd, which was absolutely fantastic, raucous, loud, one of the loudest I've heard in a while before kickoff. It was all about breaking it up so that they could keep control of the game as much as possible. And I thought they were very good and did that very well.
It just shows you it's a matter of inches, because within 90 seconds of the first half, Newcastle could be ahead. Jacob Murphy's shot hitting the post. And within 3 minutes of the second half, it's Isak that hits the frame of the goal as well. So they could have found themselves either ahead or they could have found themselves on level terms, James.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The pattern of both halves was quite similar, really. And Newcastle had their best spells in the first 10 minutes of each of them. And, these are fine margins. Fabian Schär free-headed 6 yards out or 1-0. That goes in. Again, it's a completely different game. It was a fantastic save from Aaron Ramsdale. I just thought on the balance of the chances that both sides created, I think Arsenal deserved to win. If you think about that period after they went 1-0 up, Gabriel Martinelli went through on goal, Bukayo Saka went through on goal, Odegaard had that one just on the stroke of half-time after a lovely little interplay between those three players. I just think on the balance of the chances that they created, they probably deserved it. But yes, look, in these big games, and particularly at grounds like this, you have to ride your luck in moments, and Arsenal certainly did that, but they took full advantage. There's only one team that's won here this season. I think that was Liverpool, and that was when Liverpool played against 10 men, I think, for 60, 70 minutes of that match. So to come here and beat them 11v11, particularly given just the context, the title's on the line here today. If Arsenal had lost this, it was over.
Yeah.
And what they've done is they've gone and secured a win that I think when everybody was working out their runnings and seeing where they might get points and where they might drop points, I don't think many had them winning here. And so this is a real step forward for them in that context. Real boost for them, back-to-back wins, puts the sort of wobble behind them and really turns the heat up on Manchester City, who, of course, have not just got the domestic running to worry about, but also a Champions League semi-final.
Yeah, Stevie, Sorry, Stevie, I don't think anybody's saying it's Arsenal's best performance of the season, but do you think it was their most complete performance of the season?
Do you know what I think today did is kind of shut up anybody who thought that Arsenal had bottled anything.
Yeah.
I think we saw today, the reason why Arsenal dropped the points they have is because of the back line. Mm-hmm. When you don't have your best centre-back in Saliba, that's when the problem started for Arsenal. And they've played some real good football the whole season. And they haven't bottled anything. They've created chances and probably could have scored 3 or 4 goals in every single game they've stepped on the field. So I hope today silenced anybody who said that Arsenal had bottled this campaign, because I've always said that they hadn't. It just so happened that the back line that they were left with wasn't as good as it had been with Saliba in it. So I'm glad to see them playing the football the way Arteta said they always did, and today they got the rewards. And I'm with James. I think they deserved it in the end. Yes, they gave up some chances, but my goodness, they could have scored 7 themselves.
Yeah, it's a good point about the defence and about Saliba. Look, you challenged for titles. You won 5 titles as a defender in a really good side. Would you look back, if you're an Arsenal fan at the end of the season, regardless, and say, if he'd played Kiwior instead of Rob Holding, could it have been different, or is that just clutching at straws after the event?
Yeah, I don't think so. And Kiwior didn't come in and wasn't able to play till late on anyway. So I don't think you can say that. I think if you're Arsenal, you look at it realistically and say, right, we need to get more depth at centre back, and can we get an upgrade on Gabriel, because he's had a good season, but can we get an upgrade on Gabriel besides Saliba? And then that way you have Gabriel coming on if somebody's injured or needs to rest somebody. That's how you need to look at it if you're Arsenal, in my opinion.
I have to say, you were a super footballer. You went into management, but if ESPN doesn't work or you fancy a change, being a ventriloquist would be pretty good as well, because you've just had a good answer there without even moving your lips, which was rather impressive. We'll try and sort out these gremlins in the system. Let's head back to St James's Park. We will bring in Luis Miguel Echegaray very shortly after Stevie Nicol and James Olley. But James, from a Newcastle perspective, the likelihood is it's still going to be Champions League football next season with a top 4 finish. From an Arsenal perspective, title, still a small possibility. they've done what they had to today. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Newcastle, you know, they've all season they've had, well, they still do have the best defensive record in the league, and I think there's been a bit of a clamour around these parts the last few weeks for Isak and Wilson to start together in the same team, and this was the first time that they had. And without Sean Longstaff, I think they just looked a little bit unbalanced. Joel Linton sort of dropped into a more of a attacking midfield role. As I sort of said earlier, they couldn't get Guimaraes on the ball often enough, and so they had to keep sort of going long to Wilson. And you know, I thought Gabriel and Kivior dealt with him very well in terms of those direct balls into Wilson. Obviously, they've got there's a height advantage there. But it just meant that Isak wasn't really getting the right kind of supply. And, you know, I was here for the Newcastle Tottenham game a couple of weeks ago when Spurs were terrible that day, but the balance of the side looked really, really good. And and everybody seemed to know their roles. And it just felt as though just that switch maybe just sort of unbalanced them enough. And they couldn't quite attack with the same cohesion. A lot of credit goes to Arsenal in terms of the way that they broke up play. So that's maybe something that they need to work on for next season. But obviously, assume that they are going to get top four. They'll have more games. They'll be expected to go on the front foot more, and they'll have to open themselves up and be a bit more expansive. Not that they've been negative, but you get the point I'm making. They're going to have to. Sure. You know, face those challenges more often next season, and that's just part of the growing pains here. Really, I think sometimes we forget how quickly this turnaround has happened at Newcastle. But yeah, I mean, look from Arsenal's point of view, a huge result. It keeps the title alive, and I think it just means City have got to go and win it now. You know, Arsenal aren't. There's all this sort of accusation, quite right, as Stevie said. You know, I disagree with the idea they bottled it. They've certainly had a wobble. And they've obviously felt the pressure of the last couple of weeks and not handled it in the same way that Manchester City have. I think that's true. But there's shades of this. There's that, and then there's completely, panicking and rabbit in headlights and all of that, which I don't think they've been. They seem to forget during all of this, they've lost one game in this nightmare run of theirs, and that's away at Manchester City. That's a game you can lose at any point in the season. I think what this does for their self-confidence and their belief, they know that they can take this right to the wire now. And they know that, as I say, the pressure is on City to go and win it. They've got that difficult trip to Goodison Park in between the two games against Real Madrid. We know Everton aren't a great side at the moment, but that will be a very, very tough atmosphere for them to go and play their football. They can't necessarily go and make 6, 7, 8 changes like they did against Leeds and expect to win that one. So that's all Arsenal could really ask for after their recent run. I think it's just to make City, keep them honest and make them get themselves over the line rather than handing it to them.
That's a good point, Stevie, that James raises, that City are going to have to win this title. It's not going to be a case of they're going to have it handed to them because Arsenal keep dropping points. And from City's perspective, do you know what? That might actually be a decent thing because their focus is going to have to remain there throughout the season. And if they get past Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final, they'll still have that focus for the Champions League final because you'll have played in teams that won the league before the end of the season. And mentally, you can kind of down tools, even though physically you're still going and you say you're not. So it's maybe a win-win all round here for both Manchester City and for Arsenal.
I absolutely agree with you. You subconsciously, when you've already wrapped it up, you in certain ways you down tools. Just from the mental side, it's not quite the same. And then when you do that, and then you all of a sudden you think you can flick a switch whenever you think that you have to, it doesn't work that way. So, yeah, in some ways, absolutely, the fact that City have to go out on the field and get after it is actually, in my opinion, good for them because there'll be no way they'll be able to be. Listen, not that they would be complacent with Pep Guardiola at your back 24/7, but in terms of mentality, you have to be switched on constantly, and that's far easier than trying to be clever and think that in certain games you can just take it easy. So I agree with you there, Mark. I think in some ways it's really good that they have to be at it between now and the end of the season.
James, final question for you at St James's Park. Can you see a situation, do you think it's likely that both Arsenal and Manchester City will win every single game remaining in the Premier League that they have to play this season?
Well, it's Brighton, isn't it? It's probably Brighton that holds the key here because they've both got to play them. Arsenal's next game is against Brighton at home. You'd probably rather have them at home than away, given how good they've been. But look, I mean, I still think City are going to win it because I do think they're going to win every game. All Arsenal can do is win every match and hope that isn't the case, that City drop points somewhere. I think Brighton are more likely to take points off Arsenal than they are off City. I'd probably say if you really push me that City will win every game and maybe Arsenal draw against Brighton, and that could be the difference. Obviously, there's a 1 point advantage, in any case. But I still think it's City's title to lose, even though Arsenal, as I say, are going to keep them honest right to the wire here.
James, thank you for your time today. Safe travels back in first class on that railway line down the East Coast. Enjoy yourself. Thank you. We'll speak to you again soon. Stevie, while Luis Miguel gets set up, what type of title race has this been for both those involved and for the neutrals like us, who, if you get more games like today, it's been spectacular viewing at times?
No, I think it's been imperative that Arsenal have done what they've done. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been any sort of Premier League title to remember much of, because City and Arsenal are way ahead of everybody else. Yes, Newcastle have come with a late run, but in terms of a season and having a title race, without Arsenal, this could have been pretty boring. It would have been a season that we'd be talking about would be relegation. So the fact that Arsenal have done what they've done has been absolutely imperative for everybody that watches football, because there just wouldn't have been a title race.
And I'm kind of glad that's happened as well, Stevie, because it would be easy for the negativity. Oh, Arsenal's bottles crashed and all that nonsense. We're talking positively about that after a season whereby we might not have had a Liverpool or a Man United or a Chelsea title challenge. They've had their respective results. But we are talking about it in a positive, that Manchester City have welcomed the chase. Arsenal have been phenomenal at stages. I think I read, what's the stat? Arsenal has dropped points in only 3 out of 19 Premier League matches in which they led at half-time. And we've had a lot of questions, Luis Miguel. Welcome in. Luis Miguel Echegaray from ESPNFC. And one of them is to do with the midfielders for the Gunners. One of the questions, is Odegaard the most important rather than the best midfielder that Arsenal has had since Cesc Fabregas? What do you reckon?
Yes, 100%. Hey, good to be here. Absolutely. Listen, I think it's important to understand a few things about Martin Odegaard, which kind of echoes pretty much what you fine gentlemen have been saying in this episode so far, and Arsenal, because let's remember that this is still a project in the making for Mikel Arteta. Champions League qualification is actually the very important achievement that they needed to do. Winning the title, of course, is massive, but getting to Champions League is incredible. And Martin Odegaard, who has been in the spotlight pretty much since he was like 11 years old, has really demonstrated just how important he is. Not just about his architect-like delivery in the midfield or the way that he commands a presence, both subtly and emphatically as well with his goals. But statistically speaking, more than Frank Lampard, right? The greatest midfield scorer in Premier League history. Martin Odegaard has more goals than Frank Lampard from open play in a single season. He now has 13, which is, a tremendous achievement for somebody who, by the way, is not really about the goals. He's about creating opportunities, making sure that others around him, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Jesus, they shine. He is so important. So yes, if we're comparing them to the likes of somebody as fantastic as Fabregas, who is one of my favorite midfielders the Premier League has ever seen, I would agree with you there, Mark. I think that he is very, very important. Or with the question that he is that important. And remember, yes, winning the title is absolutely tremendous. It's something that they've wanted to do since the Invincibles year. But qualification to the Champions League is an absolute must in this project, and they've done it. Emphatically, they will do it because of a player as important as the Norwegian Martin Odegaard.
Stevie, you played with some wonderful midfielders. You linked up well with them. He's only 24. We kind of forget that. Made his Real Madrid debut at 2015, Martin Odegaard. And he's played, including kind of youth games for his country, over 400 matches already at just 24. What is it that makes him special? What is it that makes him the kind of conductor of Arsenal's orchestra, in your opinion?
That's his football brain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, it's about the majority of it is what goes on between your ears. And that's what makes people like him special, because they see things that others maybe don't see. And then not only do they see it, but they see it quicker than anybody. And then, of course, after that, you have to execute. And to execute, you have to have the composure and obviously the ability. So, you know, for me, people like Odegaard, it's about what goes on between their ears. I do sometimes hate this question, though, because I always think about people like Odegaard, and you think, well, you know, without Xhaka this year, would he have been able to do what he did?
Fair.
Without Partey, would he have been able to do what he did? You know, I think about the other side in City, how we talk about De Bruyne, but we never really say much about people like Rodri.
Yeah.
You know, where is De Bruyne without him? So yeah, I mean, it's about what goes on between your ears, no question, for Odegaard. But I tell you what, we've got to give a lot of praise for the guys that sit behind him and do a lot of the dirty work so that he can go forward and execute the way he does.
The other thing, Luis Miguel, about Arsenal going forward, Stevie and I and Xhaka and the guys from ESPNFC, we did a piece after the transfer window had closed talking about who the best January transfer signing was. A lot of the boys said someone from Arsenal. They said Leandro Trossard. And it took him a while to get going. The reason I'm mentioning him is to ask you if you think Martinelli kind of realized, hold on here, he's in my position. And there was a spell, Luis Miguel, when he wasn't the flavour of the month, Gabriel Martinelli. But he quickly was again, because he made sure when he got his opportunity, he raised his game to a better level. So how important has Trossard been, that January signing, for Gabriel Martinelli and his form between January and now?
That's a really, really good question, Mark. And I think you made a good point by connecting it to somebody as important as Leandro Trossard coming in January, adding that pressure to Gabriel Martinelli, the 21-year-old Brazilian. I'll even add another point as well, that during that time, of course, you know, and obviously World Cup specifically, he was also not considered for the Brazilian World Cup, which added another note to him wanting to prove himself. Obviously, the Brazilian national team has so much talent specifically going forward, and even at 21, it's a big thing. But those arrivals in January for Arsenal were key because they were challenging for spots, as you correctly said. Listen, here's the thing about Gabriel Martinelli that sometimes I say, and people are like, what are you talking about? So I want to just explain myself a little bit here. He reminds me a lot of what the things that a younger Cristiano Ronaldo would do at Real Madrid. I am not calling him Cristiano Ronaldo, so everybody calm down, put your phone down, stop screaming at me. What I'm saying is that some of the things that I loved about Ronaldo doing at Real Madrid, specifically when he goes wide, and today was a really good example, is that he was so good with his timing and trying to see who was entering the box, whether it was Karim Benzema or anybody else in that time. Martinelli does that a lot, specifically today for that own goal by Fabian Schär. That's how important he is. So when Leandro Trossard comes in, who's a little bit more of a nifty kind of outside winger, like maybe attacking midfielder right behind the striker, who likes to penetrate, who likes to come in from other sides, Martinelli had to think to himself, I need to be more diverse in the way that I attack. I can't just be somebody that sits on the wing and comes in, or I can't just be somebody that sits behind the striker if it's Gabriel Jesus or Nketiah, whoever. I need to be smart with the ball. I need to make sure that I'm able to produce the same kind of brain-like tactics that somebody like Martin Odegaard does, or even Bukayo Saka in certain matches. And today he proved it. And remember, 21 years old. And, you know, this is the youngest squad in the Premier League, 23.9, I believe. So to have players like that are so smart, just like Stevie said about Martin Odegaard having a good football brain, Martinelli equally is just as important. And again, he has 15 goals this season, Mark. Like that's a big deal. So to have somebody like that, and then Leandro Trossard to challenge him, because in order to have Champions League qualification or win a title, you don't just rely on an 11. You rely on a squad. And that's how good this is for Arsenal.
Let's wrap this up by talking about the top four, because City and Arsenal battling for the title. There's 2 spots remaining. It's likely to be Newcastle and Manchester United. Stevie Nicol, Liverpool, momentum. Remember 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Don't even waste your breath.
What?
Don't miss
Look,
your breath.
when
Let him
Alisson
ask
scored-
it, Stevie.
Come
Let him
on.
ask
When
it.
Alisson scored that goal at West Brom, they went on this run and they had like 8 wins and 2 draws to end the season. They went from 7th or 8th into the Champions League spots. Any chance that the top 4 right now is not the top 4 in whichever order at the end of the season, Stevie? Any chance for your old boys, Liverpool?
If we're talking, listen, you can never say zero chance, right? Because it is possible, right? But I'll tell you what, I am not putting $1 on any of that happening. I mean, let's be honest. Yes, Brighton still have City and Arsenal to play, but if Brighton win all the games, then Brighton goes above Liverpool. So this is way out of Liverpool's hands, number one. So the chances are slim to none. So forget it.
Luis Miguel, see what he's doing here. It's that old card. No, it's
No,
fine. And then
No, it's not. No, it's
deep
not.
down
I'm
he
telling
believes.
you, it's not
Deep
happening.
down you believe.
There's no double bluff here at all.
He conveniently freezes when it suits him, Mark Donaldson. I think that's the case right there. No, listen. I think that Stevie's right. I think the issue with Liverpool's problems happened way earlier. It's not just about now. But if we look at the remaining schedule for Liverpool, numerically speaking and, fixture speaking, they do have every single game is a doable one. Even against my very own Aston Villa, they can do it. However, right, they've played 35 matches. Manchester United still have 2 games in hand. Obviously, the one that they have to play today against West Ham will make it 1. But you would imagine that Manchester United will get it done. It's just that I'm a little bit worried about United's final against Man City, how much that will take out of it. I'm also thinking about, obviously, playing Chelsea. I know they're an absolute mess, but you never know. But it's also doable for them because they got West Ham, Wolves, and Bournemouth. So I imagine that the table, as you asked originally, Mark, I think it stays the same. But Brighton, my goodness. Just like James Olley said, they really hold the keys to a lot of things. They want their own European qualification. They still have to play the title challengers, Champions League players, and Roberto De Zerbi deserves a nomination for Manager of the Season. What he has done, and an already existing great foundation of Brighton, of what Graham Potter and the team did before that, he has transformed them into something absolutely magical. So Brighton hold the key for a lot of things. But yeah, I think it stays the same. I think United and Newcastle will hold on to those Champions League spots.
We'll wrap this up. My thanks to Luis Miguel, to the wonderful Stevie Nicol, who knows that Liverpool really do have a chance of a top 4 finish, and to James Olley from St James's Park. ESPNFC on the whistle. We'll be back soon. Thank you. Bye for now.